Welcome to the Owners Club podcast. This is our first episode, and I'm so excited to be interviewing you. Please introduce yourself to the audience and what you are up to lately.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so excited for the show. We have some amazing stories to tell about our members and owners, so I'm very excited that we're doing this. My name is Young. I am the founder and business coach at Owners Club, and I am very, very excited about Owners Club. It's a really big passion project for me that stemmed from something that's happened over the last 4 or 5 years. I started to really go through a new chapter in my life. Some could call it a midlife crisis. And I really switched hard from being in venture-backed companies to really focusing on small businesses, and both for myself as a business owner and operator, and also for others. And I just like love it. I love talking to people that own small businesses, and I love people that own service businesses, and I love helping, salt of the earth, real people. No, not that tech people aren't real people, but just like working with people that are building something that they're passionate about from the ground up, and in a very methodical, bootstrapped, organic way. And it's been really, really fulfilling and good for my heart. And I equated a lot to finding my purpose, or ikigai. And that's like the combination of what the world will pay you for, what are you good at, what do you love to do, and all of those things kind of center around building small businesses and helping others build theirs. And so I'm very, very excited about Owners Club and what we're building here, and excited that we're going to start sharing some of our owner stories through this podcast.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Yeah, so just for background, for those that don't know, Young and I both work within Owners Club. Young founded the company, and I came on about a year ago. We're co-hosting this podcast together, and Owners Club is all about providing community and coaching, whether it be one-on-one or cohort, for small business owners. So we take owners that are really good at what they do, and we help them with the operations, finance, and back-end processes so they can scale their passion. So Young and I have been collaborating on this for a little over a year, and it's been something that I think we're both so passionate about and have seen really cool success with. And this podcast will be a way of sharing those stories of others with a broader audience. So, Young, I know that you have been an entrepreneur basically your whole life, but I would love for you to take me back and tell me about what initially sparked your entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I guess the initial spark came from my father. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and so I kind of grew up in it. And I think that really was the original spark, right? Because it became possible, accessible, and approachable because I lived with an entrepreneur and grew up with that in my ecosphere, which I think made it a lot more approachable for me, or not as a big of a task, or what didn't seem as dangerous. And so I think that's the original spark, right? Watching my dad build his business and fail businesses, and build another business and try another business and grow businesses. And so watching him kind of move us around a lot through the Bay Area, and then build his career and his wealth, right? And that was the original spark. And obviously I'd love to mimic him and aspire to his level as best I can, because I think that's a natural tendency of kids with their parents, but also be a better version of it. And so I think that was the original spark. And then the actual catalyst for it, and the opportunity that really charged and supercharged me, was my first business with my mentor. So I met a lady named Sunny. She had moved here from Korea, and one of our mutual friends introduced us. And so she became a good friend and mentor to me. And eventually she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you have a lot of like drive and desires and skills, and you seem like you're hungry to try to do something, but would you be interested in doing it with me?" And I never really knew how I would enter the entrepreneurial game. I was just more focused on getting out of college, right? Like, let's just get done with college, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do as an entrepreneur, or maybe get a job. It wasn't like a pressing thing that I had to be an entrepreneur. But when she tapped me on the shoulder when I was a junior, I jumped at the opportunity. And so we started a restaurant together, and she brought the capital, the experience, the network, the know-how, and the plan. And I was essentially her right hand. And I got to learn from her and her 25, 28 years of experience building businesses and restaurants, and really great experience in understanding all of that wealth of knowledge into this one experience. And simultaneously, I got to do a lot of work. And the exchange was that, I would provide the labor and the work when people called in sick as we scaled. And, I was a dishwasher all the way to the general manager, and I did everything in between. I did whatever the business needed under her guidance and tutelage. It was an incredible success. It was amazing. We did over $3 million our first year of business. And,
Wow.
um, it really showed me the possibilities of, what a business could do and what a business could be, but also just how fun it was to build it. There's a certain level of satisfaction. It's hard to build a business, but there's a certain level of satisfaction of like striving for something. It gives you purpose, it gives you engagement, interest. And I know it's hard, and most business owners are struggling with the stress of it all. But the reality is, once you exit or make it, you'll miss and love the fight and struggle,
Yeah.
because that's actually the fun part, believe it or not. Yeah.
And you were super young when you did this. Were you 18 at this first business?
Yeah, I was 18. That's right.
That's it.
Very young.
And what would you go back now and tell your 18-year-old self that maybe there was a challenge that you faced in the launch phase or even the middle or end phase of this business? What do you wish you could have, what wisdom would you bestow on your 18-year-old self now?
I guess I'd say a lot of things. I would tell myself to, be better about understanding finance. I think finance is something that I didn't really learn until I was in my 30s, and really focus on like how to forecast and understand your finances and cash flow. I think those two things would have been really, really helpful for me. And then two, also to be better about hedging your bets. I was always like all in or nothing because I grew up in Silicon Valley. And so I grew up surrounded by people that just threw everything they had into a business and even went into debt for it. And then banking on the fact that it was going to be some sort of moonshot scale. And so you had this mentality of like, if you're not willing to, strive and hurt yourself and go into debt for 5 to 10 years, don't even start. There was like this ethos and mentality in Silicon Valley. And I just kind of grew up in that. And in hindsight, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And I wish I told myself that you can make a lot of money just owning a restaurant. And I wish I never sold that thing. And I wish I kept it. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so then since that first endeavor, you have had a multitude of business experience, whether it be owning and operating your own businesses or working within some of the biggest well-known brands currently. So all this experience has basically been combined and packaged into what we do at Owners Club. So share with me the tools, resources, and where you picked them up from.
Yeah. So I'll try to do a very quick version of it, but we can double click as much as you want into anything that
Yeah.
you think is important. And I'm also happy to come back on to have a deep dive into each one because I learned a lot from each experience. But the highlights are is that I have always been a business person, even during school, right? I was the kid that would like find something that other kids want. Like a good example was in middle school. I found, no, was it elementary school? Kids were infatuated with Ninja Star origami, right? Like the boys were. And so I would learn how to make it and then I would start selling them for a quarter, right? I was always trying to figure out ways to like sell something and like build something then. And I mean, it never went well in high school or school, but I was always that kid. And so when I say that it was my first business, it really wasn't, but it was my first formal business was the restaurant. But after the restaurant, I proceeded to go do a lot of different things. And the number one thing that we wanted to do next, me and my business partner, was either open up a coffee shop or a sushi restaurant. And so she went to go work at a sushi restaurant and I went to go work at Starbucks to go learn the industry before we decided what to do. 6 months later, we regrouped and said, hey, here's what I think the business looks like. Here's what I think the workflow is. Here's the vendors. We basically spied. And I loved working at Starbucks. And so I asked her if I could stay and renege on our deal. And I ended up staying at Starbucks for about 4.5 years and 5 years, and used all of my entrepreneurial experiences to basically pour into hard skills. And so I learned a ton from Starbucks. They did a lot of really unique things that kind of blew my mind as it related to business. They're incredibly good at employee engagement and employer branding, a lot of community work, a lot of like supply chain work. A very, very innovative company especially back then, right? They were first to do a lot of different things, and it just blew my mind. And I couldn't wrap my brain around why a business would be so focused on employee engagement and getting the employees to volunteer in the community and all these other things. And you start to realize that it actually is good for business. And I learned a lot from that. And so I wanted to stay to learn those skills. And I learned how to do management and feedback, and employee engagement is really what I learned, how to do employee engagement, because they did a really good job of engaging their employees. And that was a really big lesson. And I could talk to you guys about this for hours because I did a lot at Starbucks. I was also a spokesperson for Starbucks. I helped launch 6 new locations for them once the Pete's and Starbucks anti-compete for the West Coast dropped. Starbucks started expanding a lot of locations into California. So I was part of that, helping them expand a bunch of stores out there. I did the Got Milk commercial. I was the person that represented Starbucks for the Got Milk campaign. If you guys remember that from the early 2000s, I'm the first non-celebrity to be a model for that campaign. I did a lot of random things for Starbucks, so I have a lot of stories there. But the biggest thing that I learned was people engagement. And then I went to Apple, and I learned a lot about logistics and organization and fearless leadership and negotiations, a lot of negotiations, and really around like hard technical product skills, right? Just like having a really solid product and process. Apple was a really great training ground for high stakes, very, very high stakes. So when Apple Retail first launched, there was no ordering queue, and there was a fanaticism around the product. And so you would have like over 1,000 people camping out for over a week to
Wow.
buy the iPhone when it first launched, right? And proceeded that way for 3 or 4 years. I mean, even after I left, it was like that. They didn't do the online ordering system until way later, and it was just a very unnerving and fantastic experience of just like managing chaos, because you had these stores that were just like filled with people. I mean, we had like 150 employees in our location,
Wow.
and at any given point there was 100 people working. We had full-time staff that just were like dedicated to giving out breaks. Like literally, that's all they did for a living,
Wow.
is they just went around and said, "Hey, did you take a 15 minute? Did you take a lunch?" Like, and then just checking them off and confirming that they did it, because there's so many moving pieces of operating this business. And in the beginning, it used to be so crazy because there's no online ordering. It was just like all through the
And this
store.
was the store in Palo Alto, right? Like this was Steve Jobs' store.
Yeah, it was informally called Steve Jobs' store. He would come in like pretty frequently, actually. Yeah, so he lived 6 blocks away,
Wow.
and he would come in, and it was kind of chaotic. Like there were many times, I mean, at least many times a day, where people would say, "Oh, I know Steve from this," or "I was his babysitter," or this and that. And it was really cool. So you got to meet a lot of people that knew him, and this is when he was alive, right? And so he would physically come in a lot, and it was a great experience, really, really great experience, and learned a lot about, like I said, having really high technical skills and product knowledge and high quality systems and processes. Because I think everyone expects that from Apple, right? Just to be really well thought out, pristine, and clean. And so that was a really good experience. And then I went to, there's a bunch of different things I did. After that, I did go volunteer. I started a software company that engaged volunteerism. We basically rewarded people for doing good in the world. And then it wasn't a nonprofit. Everyone thought it was, but it's actually for corporate volunteer engagement. So there's a lot of services and softwares that help, corporate employees volunteer. Statistically, it shows, a lot of benefit in employee engagement and retention and productivity if you offer things that employees can do in the community behest their organization. And so we were trying to build a software solution for that, and then also create something that would help the community. We were idealists, right? We're trying to figure out ways to like use technology to like make the world a better place. And we raised a seed round for that, got into 500 startups, and kind of got our first taste. I got my first taste into really what venture was like, and experience what that looked like to fundraise and do all those things. And that was a really fun experience, and very, very incredibly hard. And I learned a lot about, venture. I learned a lot about fundraising. I learned a lot about sales. I learned a lot about nonprofits, a lot about government and nonprofits, and how everything works and how the world works, how communities work, how society works. You just don't know, because no one really
Yeah.
understands like, oh, what do we do with, the homeless? What do we do with disenfranchised and are underserved? Or what do we do with our gas and electric and water grids and urban developments? Like there's all these things that go on to make a city work. And we never look at I mean, I'd say the vast majority of us never even like ask, let alone even
Yeah.
know like all the different government entities and nonprofits and services that are like involved in making this ecosystem happen. And so that was really eye opening for me to just kind of broaden my perspective and all the ways that you can make money, and also all the ways that are infrastructure versus like layers that you can weave in and out of. It was a very, very enlightening time, but it really taught me a lot about nonprofits and government, which was really, really helpful and just broadened my scope. And then I worked for Philz Coffee, early employee there, and learned about venture again and how to fundraise. We raised a lot of money very quickly, and was able to play a lot of different roles in that company as it scaled up, and you know, did whatever the company needed. I was the utility knife, right? And I was able utility knife. I was the utility tool, and I was able to kind of flex and adapt to the needs of the business. And we raised, I think, like four rounds of funding in 2 years, so very rapid
Wow.
pace. Yeah, and did a lot of random things and just did whatever the company needed, and it was super fun, very good experience. Learned a lot of technical skills in a lot of different functions, and was able to put a lot of notches on my belt. So like got to work on product, got to work on marketing, got to work on logistics, got to work on all these things that you don't get access to working as a cog in a bigger company. I got to do a lot of different things, exposed to a lot of different jobs and types. So it was fascinating. I think I'm getting my timeline a little mixed up here, but I also learned a lot from volunteering. So I sat on a lot of boards after Go Volunteer. For about 4 or 5 years, I sat on about 5 nonprofit boards at any given point,
Wow.
and I would always rotate them in and out as I've termed out. But I was also the chair of the Art and Wine Festival for the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce, and it was like the largest fundraiser for them for their annual operations. And then it also supported a handful of nonprofits locally as well. And I actually learned a lot. I probably learned the most technical skills from that experience over any company experience I've had.
I
And
didn't
so it's,
know that.
yeah.
I had no idea.
Well, it's kind of funny because everyone, says like, "Oh, you're so lucky you have all these work experiences that you have," and I'm like, but it's kind of funny because the biggest thing the most transferable skills and the most knowledge I gained was actually from a volunteer role.
And
And
why? What was unique about it?
the scale of it, the
Yeah.
sheer volume and scale, and the exposure to the processes that go into it. So it's the largest art and wine festival west of the Mississippi, right? So I think it's the second largest in the United States, but it's definitely the largest. You see 200,000 people over the course of 2 days. It's
Wow.
massive, right? And it takes over 1,000 volunteers just to execute it, just to have like people
Wow.
pour. It's a massive art and wine festival, and you're planning for it all year long, and you're talking to city officials to get approvals for shutting down the city, police for safety and security, the fire for business continuity and disaster relief. You're talking to corporations to sponsor it because they you need the money to pay for all this stuff to get set up. You're talking to the small business owners that are going to be impacted because the streets are shut down, and then
Yeah.
also impacted if they're on the street because their businesses are going to blow up, right? They're going to like get a flood of people coming in, and everyone has opinions. Everyone has needs and wants, and you're orchestrating not just one customer. You're orchestrating like 6 or 7. Sometimes I guess you could even say 9 or 10 if you think about even the internal vendors that you have to manage. And then here's the real kicker, because not only is it just logistically complicated, and not only do you have to talk to a lot of different stakeholders and people to organize this, the most complicated thing about it was just the sheer logistics of managing 1,000+ volunteers over the course of 2 days,
Yeah.
because they're volunteering. Like
They're not being paid.
they're not being
Yeah.
paid. And so you have to learn so many negotiation skills, so much leadership skills, so many great communication skills. And you have to be convincing, you have to be inspirational, you also have to be kind of harsh and a little hard when they're not performing. Like it's a very, very hardcore job to have to manage that many people that are volunteering, because they all have different needs and wants, and they're not getting paid. So there's no leverage. You have to like literally use all these, you have to overcompensate with all these soft skills and leadership skills to convince and inspire them to work because there's no other leverage. Where at a job, you have leverage of pay, promotion, compensation, benefits. There's a dizzying array of stuff that you have leverage against. And not to say that that's good. You should be a good leader and you should obviously engage your people, even at a company when you have those things. But if you get rid of all those things and you try to manage someone that's not getting paid, you really have to compensate with leadership skills. And it was a huge lesson in that just alone. But just getting exposed to C-level executives at Microsoft and Google and all these really big tech companies because you need to convince them to sponsor this, talk all the nonprofit leaders that want money from it, because it funds their operations and the things that they need, talking to the small business owners, the vendors, like it's such a wild experience. And I did that for 4 years, yeah. So
Wow.
it was really fun, really, really fun. I learned so much from that experience. Yeah. And it taught me probably the most out of all the things that I know. Yeah.
It's interesting because I already see correlations between those experiences and what you've created at Owners Club, where there are all these soft skills that you've distilled into like teachable moments or things that you can actually teach and pass on, like how to give feedback, how to manage people, how to develop KPIs and tie them to compensation. All these things that you've developed within Owners Club are almost, they've been stress tested, tried in all of these previous opportunities. And so I think we're only missing one that I wanted you to hit on, which would be Limelight. And then I have a question of how we got to Owners Club, but tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about Limelight and what you did there and what has been distilled into what we do at Owners Club.
Yeah, I sure, and Limelight was awesome. I joined in it was early stage again, same time as Phil's, kind of like at the pre-seed round, same as Phil's. I was an early stage employee and was a utility player. Right, my CEO, who's now my mentor and friend, we talk every single week. Used me for whatever the company needed while I was there, and I was there for it. I loved it. I thought it was great, and so I originally got hired to do I think it was customer success or marketing. And then very quickly, within 2 months, he asked me to take over finance. And then because we lost our operations person, we were doing diligence for seed round. And then from there, went to customer success. And then it just played whatever role. And then I did operations and then I did people even for a little bit. But it was a really great experience because what I learned from that is that Limelight Health, up to this point, it's been like restaurants, retail, art and wine festival, logistics people, like, kind of on site, and even Phil's, right? Because, opening up locations, doing go to market, doing expansion was still relatively logistics and people, right? It was very
Yeah.
hands on, and it was based on like this kind of like logistical play between those two things, right? Expanding a brick and mortar and managing and organizing different stakeholders of people. Limelight was interesting because it's insurance technology. It's a software and it's an enterprise software, HIPAA regulated. And it's technically a fintech software. So it's actually like heavy, heavy data sets, right? And, AI wasn't necessarily there yet, but it was a lot of machine learning, a lot of like enterprise level code that was HIPAA regulated. So just a lot of really opposite functionality as to what my previous experiences were in expanding brick and mortar with logistics and stakeholders, and yet the skills were transferable. And it was like a huge eye opener for me because I realized that, like, no matter how fancy you think your business is, no matter what you think your business is so unique, and I do AI and I do robotics and I do mental health and I do all these things, at least 60% of the business is exactly the same. I would actually go far as to say 75-80% of the business is exactly the same. You still need a strong top of funnel. You still need a strong bottom of funnel or a process therein. You still need a strong plan to engage and retain and increase the value for your customers. You need a strong process for recruiting, engaging, and maintaining people. And you need good physical visibility. The core of the business is exactly the same no matter what skin you put around it. And I realized that all the things that I learned were so transferable. And didn't matter how much smarter my coworkers were, or how cool they were in the things that they were talking to me about. Reality is that nothing will move unless you get these things done. And the business can start to operate once you start to move these core things. And it started to really like seed a thought in my brain, right? It was like the first little nugget. And I started to realize that they're just similarities across any business. And I think it's a varying degree of percentages. My thesis is it's really high. My thesis is really high, and so I'm actually like when I finish my thesis right now, which is to see if I can build a bunch of businesses and start cash flowing. My goal is in like 5 or 10 years, if I am in a good position where I can kind of like take a big risk, is actually to crowdsource the most ridiculous business idea that any like I'm gonna like put it out there and try to like say, give me the most ridiculous business idea you can think of, like dog experience hiking. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something random and crazy that no one would think was a good business idea. And I'd love to like find something that is just so ridiculous and see if I can't turn it into a viable business just through proper operational rigor, no function expertise, right? And I just want to see. I just want to see because I truly feel like business is like, I'm not saying it's going to be a great business, but you can basically operate a business with just pure rigor and get it to a point where it's cash flow positive. And is it going to be a great business with people that are passionate? All those, probably not. Especially if you pick a random, ridiculous business on purpose, business idea on purpose. And do you need a function expert and a creative, someone that's passionate? Oh yeah, I absolutely think you need it to like grow it and scale it. But I don't think you actually need it to operate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And make
so
it do what you want it to do. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. That really taught me that there's similarities. And so fast forwarding to today, and like I've been now consulting for businesses, tech startups primarily, using my early stage experience and venture experience to get startup founders past that scale. But by having so many repetitions, I didn't have to wait a year or two of working here. 2 years, I average about 2 years at places. So 2 years of working here, I learned this thing at Limelight. 2 years I learned this thing at Philz, and 2 years I learned this thing at Go Volunteer, and so on and so forth. Because I was consulting, I started to see 4 to 8 clients at a time. And I got exposed to more businesses at rapid scale. And I started to see the similarities more apparently. And so now it's like pure etched in stone that these similarities started coming out, whether it was a mental health company, whether it was a AI company or a crypto company. The similarities were like more and more apparent because I'm watching them simultaneously. And so I started documenting those similarities into a system, which is what Owners Club is. The Owner's Manual is, and that's why Owners Club was formed, because the Owner's Manual, that system of the similarities, is what we started to coach other business owners with. So I started taking small business owners as clients and running them through the similarities to test to see if it worked. And it works incredibly well. It works insanely well. Yeah. And so the first couple of businesses that we did this with very quickly ratcheted up to the 7-figure mark. And we're talking like less than a year. And it's really unique to see that because 90% of small businesses fail in 5 years. 60% fail in the first year, I believe, and less than 8% ever make more than $1 million a year. And so in a matter of a year and a half of starting to run people through the system, I think we cranked out like $3 million businesses. And I'm just like, wow, we're really beating the odds with this system. And so I was very curious. And so that's when I started to like really dial it in and really like format it and optimize it. And then I started testing it on myself. And then also hiring someone to try it. So the real test was to see, can someone else do the system? Because then the system actually works. And then can I also do it on myself versus someone else's business? So those are the 2 different tests I wanted to see to really to flush out the system. And so we hired Jamie. And Jamie then coached a bunch of people. And, you know, as a non-business owner, she basically was able to coach business owners through the system and help them scale. And she took a little longer than me, but she was able to do it. And so we brought you on, and you've been now helping us do the same thing and starting to scale the system out. Because now we know that it works, right? We can train someone to use the system to coach business owners through it. So that makes me feel good. And then as it relates to my endeavors, I have now started 8 different, well, more than that. I've started like 15. I failed like 7 of them already, but I have 8 operating businesses right now using the system. And that is really exciting because I'd say 3 of them do over $1 million. And we're talking about like doing all this in 2 years. I'm not talking about 20 years. I'm talking about like in the last 2.5 years I've been doing this. And so I'm very, very excited to say that I'm getting more and more confident that we're fine tuning a really good system. And that's kind of the genesis of Owners Club. Just trying to get this information out to people and making sure they have skin in the game and turning it into a viable business.
It's an interesting one because, like you said, the odds are stacked against you. And the problem that you're addressing through developing Owners Club is because the odds are stacked against you. Businesses fail. It's hard to make a passion turn into profit. And it's nearly impossible, based on the odds, to get it to $1 million at any point of the business. You probably stop doing it before you reach it, or it just seems impossible margin wise to reach it. So it's really special, and we've seen it time and time again, and I have now seen it firsthand just how powerful the system can be, especially when applied to someone's passion. But
You've literally coached at least, I think, 3 to their $1 million range, even in the
I've
year
gotten
you've
to
been
see
here.
3 hit it. Yeah, which
That's
is
my
amazing.
point. Just the fact that you've done 3 already is already beating the odds. Like it's
Yeah.
literally against all odds that you did that with just the purview that you have of clients that you're coaching. That's what I'm saying. It's like really fascinating. I know a lot of people will say this to me, and they say it to me all the time. They're like, it's not about making money, Young. It's about building a business that makes you happy and all those other things. And I completely agree. My only recommendation to businesses is learn the systems, because learn the systems and processes so that you can get sick. You can
Yep.
take time off. You can do what you want to do. So I get it. You wanted to make cupcakes. And so that's why you started a cupcake business. It's not about being a millionaire. It's about being able to make cupcakes doing what you love. Sure, I'm not saying you have to make money. I'm just saying learn the systems and learn the processes so that you can only focus on making cupcakes. You know what a brilliant business would be is if you had someone else doing finance, someone else doing marketing, someone else doing sales, and you got to make 10 cupcakes a week when you wanted to. That would be a really great business. I would be so happy for you. And I think that if you just spent the time to learn the systems and proper operational rigor, you can really free yourself up. And the reason why I recommend getting to $1 million in annual revenue for the business is a typical service business, small business, has a 15% EBITDA. And obviously some have more, some have less, but let's just say 15% is a safe number. You're talking about $150,000 in free cash flow a year. That's a good amount of money to like hire a GM. That's a good enough money to live off of. Like if you made $150,000 a year, I'd say you'd be fairly comfortable. It's enough to like invest in new ideas. It's enough to take time off. It's enough to have a little fat to operationalize your business so that you can truly do what you want in the business
Yeah.
and outsource everything that you don't like about it. And so that's why I'm infatuated with the $1 million mark. Because once you make the $1 million mark, it's a lot easier to hire people to sustain it and grow it if you wanted to.
And buy you that freedom. Okay, so explain to the audience, we've developed very methodically and thoughtfully our 3 core offerings at Owners Club. So we have the one-on-one coaching, we have cohort coaching, we have community. If you don't mind elaborating a bit on each of why we offer them, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to be super clear to the listeners. Like we're using our own system on Owners Club. And just for the record, we were in private beta of January of last year, but we didn't actually launch because it was just kind of an idea of this concept because we knew we had something and we had so many people asking for it. So we wanted to make a system to do it. But we have actually even been doing this for we've been doing this for 11 months, 10 months. We launched Owners Club in May of last year. So we're at the 11-month mark now. Yeah, 11 months. So we're still evolving it. Yes, I'm happy to talk to you about the products, but I just want everyone to know that these products have been evolving and been developed over the course of the last 11 months to fit the needs of business owners. So we have one, first and foremost, the networking community. The biggest unlock for me as a small business owner and as a business owner in general has been hanging out with other business owners, and especially ones that can empathize or go through the same journey that I'm going through. So they're at the same stage, or they're one step ahead of me, or they're one step below me, right? So I can help people because it helps you muscle up the skills on teaching someone, right? When you have to teach someone, you muscle up your skills. Someone that's one step ahead of me is really helpful because then I can also leverage their experiences and go faster. And then the people that are in the same stage as me, it creates an echo chamber of success because you have an accountability partner and you can banter back and forth emotionally and personally and just communally. It creates this really interesting dynamic where if you can surround yourself with more people that are business owners, you will become more accustomed to business and the stressors of business. It's like the thing that, our moms used to always say, like, be careful who you hang out with, choose your friends wisely. And it's absolutely accurate. It just took me 40 years to learn it and believe my mom. But if you surround yourself with artists, it might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, but eventually you're going to think you can become an artist. If you hang out with athletes, it might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, you will eventually become an athlete. You hang out with business people that are successful, it might be 6 months or might be 6 years, but you will become a successful business owner. It is just the nature of human psychology. We permeate our surroundings, and it becomes accessible, it becomes easy, it becomes normal, and you start to change your mindset. And so that's the biggest unlock for me. And my entire life has changed the moment I started intentionally surrounding myself with people that I wanted to aspire to be like, and forced regular cadence meetings with them in little mini mastermind groups. And so I built a system. The original community program was to build that for you. So you don't have to do that. I'm doing that for you, and I'm built it at scale. It's actually for me, to be honest with you. You could just join in and benefit from it as well. The second thing that we started with was the core thing that we did, which is one-on-one coaching. And we've been testing the one-on-one coaching framework for over 2.5 years now. And we have it dialed down to a science, and we have a pretty high efficiency and effective rate. But this is really good for those that need a lot of guidance and want that velocity and momentum, right? That want that one-on-one time, and they want to move fast, and they want a lot of hand holding, right? They want to be told. And so it's not one of those places where we're just going to coach you or make you feel good about yourself. We're gonna do that, but it's like 50% coaching and 50% we're gonna literally tell you what we need you to do for the next like year or two here, because there are things that are just like standard in business, and I think that people don't realize how much they need to learn. And so we train you on your financial modeling skills. We train you on your financial visibility skills. We train you on how to build a top of funnel and measure CAC and ROAS. And we teach you these things, right? So that you actually have this knowledge that when you actually hire people, you have a baseline. You're not great at anything, but you're good enough to actually hire and manage people that are great at it, right? But you have to have a good understanding of all these different components. And so that's really great for that. But what's really interesting is that a lot of business owners can't afford coaching, or they have a stigma with coaching. They think about coaching as a luxury cost, or it's too expensive and their business can't afford it. We also have a rule that if you're not, generating enough income, we recommend as your future coaches not to hire us as coaches. And so we even have that kind of as a rule. We'll turn people down even though they want it because they're not making enough. I think that in some ways it is a luxury, but I do think that there's also a stigma around it because people don't understand how it works or the benefit of it, or because there's so many coaches out there that just make you feel good, or they just kind of tell you what they think is the silver bullet. And we don't do silver bullets. We build systems. We teach you how to build systems to find a silver bullet for yourself forever and ongoing. So that evolved into the need of creating something that was in between. So something that was lower cost, but still provided the system that they needed to learn. And that's where we came up with cohort training. And that we launched literally 5 months ago. And it's very exciting. It's exciting because now we're meeting the need in between people that just want to be a networking community, self-guided, watch the videos, do the thing yourself, to all the way to like hand-holding, high level of high touch, high level of customization and personalization with a lot of guidance, teaching, and training, to now a hybrid model where you meet with us for 13 weeks in a group of other people. So you're getting the accountability, and you're getting the lessons, and you're getting a little bit of personalization to help you understand some of the business mechanics that every business owner needs to have. So those are our 3 products that we have so far, and I'm sure we'll develop more as we go. But those are what we offer right now at Owners Club.
I love it. Thank you. And so, what we've done with this podcast and what we are going to do is we're gearing up to share the story of those that are in the community or in cohort coaching or have been one on one coaching with us for some time now. We're sharing their story. So, you're going to be able to hear about their backgrounds, where they came from, what their journey was into starting the business that they're currently owning and operating, what challenges they've overcome, and what advice they have for business owners. So, whether you're interested in business or own your own business, we have tried to make these conversations as relevant and honest and geared towards you. So we're very excited to launch this. And thank you, Young. We kind of did a mini episode with you here about your journey and background. I want to rapid fire a few questions as a way of winding this down. So my first question for you is, what is your favorite business book recommendation?
The Hard Things of Hardest Things. Oh, God, I'm butchering that. The Hard Things of Hard Things, yeah, by Ben Horowitz. My favorite business book by far. It's a really good journey, a story journey of his ascension to his company and how he became Andreessen Horowitz, right? But the storytelling is super powerful and it's super real and raw. And it just shows you how hard it is to do this. It's definitely not easy. And it's very, very enlightening to see all the different variables that can impact you. And I highly recommend it. It's very, very motivating. If I can add another one, I would say Jack Welch from The Gut has been very inspirational for me. I highly recommend reading that one as well too, because it teaches you to be more mechanical and unemotional, and really think through effort versus impact, which is a thing that we talk about a lot in Owners Club, right? So figuring out ways to, expand and grow with a very, very logical and utilitarian point of view.
I love it. And then biggest business time saving hack.
Time boxing is super, super powerful. I think that you need to really think about what you want to do and what success looks like for you, and reverse engineer how much time you want to spend on it. Then my recommendation is degrade the quality of output based on the time that you've allotted yourself. I know it sounds antithesis to all the other coaches tell you, like, have a great messaging, have a beautiful website, and like have, this awesome product line. My thesis is just make it good enough to get by. Like, if someone will pay you $5 for it and that's what you wanted, that's good. Just move on to the next problem. I think that that's really the biggest time saving hack that I have for business owners is don't beat yourself up on being great at anything. Just be good enough at everything and move it forward. And then if you get it done, then you can circle back and start making it a little bit better, making everything, the next thing a little bit better, a little bit better. And then work your way up like a spiral staircase on your business. Just like make your marketing a little better. Okay, now make your sales a little better, make your customer experience a little better. Like just keep working your way up like that. Stop trying to build these huge pillars and make anything great right off the bat, because you'll learn so much about your business and you're going to change and pivot it so many times. It's just not worth it. And you're wasting a lot of time.
I love it. You've given a lot of amazing advice through this, but if you had a valuable piece of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, those that haven't started their business yet, what would it be?
I would I would say if you're an aspiring business owner and you want to do something and you're passionate about something, I would say just start. Stop planning. Stop trying to figure out your website. Stop trying to like create something crazy. Just start. And I don't recommend you quitting your job if you have one. I'd say just be comfortable with working on evenings and weekends. And if you're not, you're probably going to be in for a rude awakening, because I think that very few of us can get away with building a business in 9 to 5. And so inevitably when you go full time in your business, the first year or two, you will have long nights and sometimes weekends, and it's just part of the business. I'm not saying it's going to be all the time, especially if you have like a consulting business, but it does happen, right? Emergencies will happen in a business. But my recommendation is just pick 5 hours or 10 hours a week that you're comfortable doing extra for 6 months, and just time box it. Say, hey, for 6 months, I'm really going to see if I can build a digital course on, doing your eyebrows better, right? Like, I don't know. I just came over. I don't know why cosmetics and makeup came up, but let's just say that's what your passion is, right? And that's what you've always wanted to do, is be some sort of like course on how to do makeup. If that's the thing, stop worrying about the website and all that other stuff. Just start blocking off like 5 hours a week that you're willing to work on it. And then what do you think are the major things that you need to do? And just start doing things in those 5 hours. And then if you need to, start degrading the quality of work on those things to get those things done and just get it to market. But the biggest thing is just to start. And my recommendation is just start asking friends and family. Oftentimes, our friends and family are our first customers. And two, they're going to be the ones that are going to be the most brutally honest. At least in my family,
Yeah.
they'll be the most brutally honest. And if they don't buy, or they give you like this weird, like, oh, maybe, let me think about it, or oh, it's so cool, but like I'm going to hold. And friends and family are the ones that you can call and be like, dude, just literally tell me what sucks about it. And you're going to get a higher chance of them actually telling you, because they care about you. And if you ask someone, it's harder for them to give you critical feedback or negative feedback because they're indifferent or they don't want to deal with the consequence of it. Does that make sense? It's
Yep.
like
It's
the people that
uncomfortable.
truly care about you will tell you when you have mud on your face or egg on your face, right? Because they care and it's inconvenient, and they'll go through that motion with you because they care about you. And so both reasons: one is they're more likely to buy from you and try it out because they're your friend, they want to support you. And two, they're much more likely to tell you when something sucks.
Yep. It's such good advice. My last question for you, last and final, what does being an owner mean to you?
Living a life that's fulfilling and finding the standard norm. There's nothing wrong with 9 to 5. My best friend is a 9 to 5er. My brother is a 9 to 5er, and I love them to death because they're happy, right? But for me, being a business owner is about finding happiness, and finding happiness in both what you're doing, how you're doing it, and when you're doing it. And I think that if you can't get to those three things, my thought process is that you have a fancy job. And so you might as well just be an employee somewhere, because you could be a lot happier, less stressed, making probably the same amount of money. And you should just be an employee somewhere. But if you want to be a business owner, then you should really learn how to do those three things so that you can learn how to run your business and get those hard skills so that you can actually get those three things. Because it's there's really no point in taking that risk unless you're going to achieve that milestone of having that freedom to operate it. You got to learn how to build systems for your business. So for me, being a business owner is somebody that, whether they got hit by a bus or won the lottery, the business will continue to operate. Then ideal state is if they won the lottery or they got hit by a bus, the business will continue to grow without them. Those two things are really kind of, for me, requirements and aspirations for me and my businesses that I'm creating. And then two, as it relates to business ownership, it goes back to the three things that I said. A business should really help the owner feed their heart, their passions, and their wallet, and their time. And if it doesn't, I'd highly recommend looking at what they can make working for someone else with less stress and less risk.
I love it. Thank you so much, Young. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and I
Mhm.
cannot wait to listen to all the other conversations.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. You're a great host. You're way better at this.
No,
I
I
love it.
love it.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Okay. Bye. Thanks.